Hey everyone, how you doing today? My name's Kirsty, aka Beth Bookish, and on today's video we're going to be looking at some authors that I have read and looking at the first, latest and most favourite one of their books that I have read. I got the idea for this video from Zoe from Zoe's All Booked. Honestly, if you have not yet watched any of Zoe's content, you are definitely missing out. Not only is she effortlessly hilarious, every single video of hers has a fuck counter in the corner, and it is so funny to just sort of, I've kind of developed a habit now of predicting how many it's going to be at the end. She's also just such an amazing human being. We have a few similarities in that we both have ADHD, we have very similar senses of humour and self-depreciation, and we are both aspiring authors who are working on our debut novels, but she has the additional superhuman superpower and thing that makes her incredible in that she is also raising 3 tiny humans at the same time as all of the other things, so she is just this unstoppable force of amazingness. So please do go check her out because she is awesome. But she did this video recently and I will link it below for you to go and check out. And it was really interesting because I don't think any of the authors that she mentioned are ones that I've read, and I was like, ooh, new people to try out. The whole point of this video is I have a selection of authors in this little thing. I'm not going to get through all of them today. This has enough for 2, and then by the time I get round to doing round 2, I'll probably have enough to do a round 3 of this. So it's going to be a fun little thing for me to do throughout the year. And basically, my criteria was either I've read 3 things by this author, so like 3 separate books, or I have read a series and something else, because there are a few authors where I was like, hey, I've read Karen Marie Moaning, for example. I've read 7 books by her, but they are all part of the same series, and I feel like I can't really talk about favourites and stuff if I've only read one thing or one series by that author. So that was kind of my criteria. Either I've read 3 completely totally separate standalones, or from 2 separate series that make up more than 3 books. So without beating around the bush, let's find out who we're going to be talking about today. Our first author is going to be... Who are you going to be? But our first author is going to be... That was really Can I read backwards? I don't think I can. Is Casey McQuiston. I have read 3 books by Casey McQuiston. The very first one that I read was Red, White and Royal Blue. I love this book so much. This was one of the first I think it was one of my first queer romances that I read when I sort of joined YouTube and BookTube and all of that. And it was one that I remember seeing people talking about, and I was like, well, might as well give it a go. I might enjoy it. And I was a bit doubtful because I was kind of like, I'm not a big fan of fictionalizing real people. But then when I found out it was a fictional version of the royal family, I was kind of a bit more cool, let's give it a go. Absolutely loved it. Had the most fantastic time. It definitely ignited my love for reading queer romance. And there were some issues with things being left out of the movie, but on the whole, I loved the movie. So it's definitely one that I would read again. It's one that I would watch again, and is still one of my favourite queer romances. The latest one I read, unfortunately, was completely the opposite. I did not enjoy it. I didn't have a good time, and I ended up DNFing it about halfway through, and that was I Kissed Shara Wheeler. And unfortunately for that one, I think it was just, there was something wrong with the pacing for me. And I know it was Casey's first foray into YA. And I feel like I just didn't get the same sort of feels and the same love for it as I got from when I read the other 2 books. So unfortunately that one did end up being a DNF, but my favourite... So Casey was not only my introduction to sort of male romance, but also sapphic, because my favourite by her is by far One Last Stop. I read it in a day. I had so much fun with it. It had new elements and new characters that I'd never seen in like books before. I didn't see the twist that's in this book. I did not see it coming, even though I probably should have. But, you know, ADHD, we tend to miss the big details because we're so focused on the little things. So the big picture tends to just like slide on by. But I didn't see it coming, and I thought it was such an incredible ending. And I remember my heart was kind of pounding out of my chest by the end of this book. So definitely loved it. It was absolutely my favourite by her. And I am really excited to continue reading and see what comes up next. And up next, for author number 2, I shouldn't have started filming wearing this jumper because I am really hot, but now I've made my commitment and I'm sticking to it. We have another contemporary writer, Beth O'Leary. Again, an author I have read exactly 3 things from. The first one is The Flat Share. I still really enjoy, from my memory, I really enjoy this one. I do now have it on a list of ones that I'm going to reread this year. It's my 5th anniversary on YouTube this year, so I wanted to go back and reread favourites from each year that I've been on YouTube, and that is one of them. But I still loved it. And again, it was one that, yes, the adaptation could have been improved a little bit more, but on the whole, I had a fantastic time. But I definitely really enjoyed it. It was the book that kind of made me realise that I like the forced proximity and the only one bed tropes. So thank you for that, Beth O'Leary, for introducing me to that wonderful thing. And I just really like the friendship group in this book. I did then read The Road Trip, and honestly, I hated it. But we're not going to dwell on that because it doesn't actually fit into the category, because The Flat Share actually is my favourite as well. So, duh! My first and favourite is The Flat Share, but my latest was The No-Show. And again, it was one of those ones where a couple of the big things kind of slipped me by because I was so focused on the little bits. And I ended up going, again, being thrown by a surprise and being like, whoa, I didn't see that coming. And I ended up really enjoying it. I liked a lot of the characters. I didn't, again, work out that it was actually what it was. And then I was kind of like, oh my god, what? When it came to light, and everyone else was like, really? You didn't figure that out? No, I didn't. Because I don't. I'm very easy to surprise, okay? But yeah, so that was the latest one, and it redeemed because obviously after the road trip, I was worried that maybe she wasn't for me and that the Flat Share was a one-off. But that one redeemed it, and I do still have the Switch to give a go, and so obviously that one will be the final decider. If I don't like the Switch, then I probably won't read her stuff again. But if I do enjoy the Switch, then obviously I'll keep going. Author number 3, and we have this one. I think I know who this is. I do. I need physical books. They're over there. This is another author where my first is also my favourite, and that is Alice. I have talked about this book so many times on this channel, it's probably not even funny anymore, but this is my favourite retelling of all time. This is another one that I'm going to be rereading soon to celebrate my 5-year anniversary because I just love it so much, and it was my favourite. I didn't expect it to be dark and twisty like it is. I didn't expect it to go the direction it goes. I didn't expect to fall in love with a psychopathic axe murderer. Who would have thought I'd fall in love with an axe murderer? Not me, but I did. And yeah, I really loved this one, and I just thought it was so phenomenal, and it was one of the first times I'd read a dark retelling like this, and I was just obsessed straight away and have continued to be so ever since. The latest I thought was a different one. I thought it was Looking Glass, and look at the sprayed edges. How beautiful are these sprayed edges? I love them so much. But it actually isn't. I have read one since, and that was The Girl in Red, which is her Little Red Riding Hood retelling. It was quite ironic that the book ended up being about a virus that was wiping everybody out at the time that we were in a global pandemic for a virus that was wiping people out. It was definitely one of those books that it was just like, this is a little on the nose and I'm freaked out. But that was the latest one that I read, and I think I gave it 4.5 or 5 stars, because I gave it 4 stars because I did enjoy it, but the ending kind of made me go a bit and felt a little bit of a letdown, but only a tiny bit. but the rest of it was so good. And she is absolutely masterful at doing those atmospheric, like, freak you out and like what the fuck kind of books. And I actually own a couple more of her books that I have yet to read. I've got all Good Girls Die Last or something, I can't remember the name of it, and I also have The Mermaid, but I do also want to get Lost Boy and give it a go, because maybe she will break the streak of never-ending terrible Peter Pan retellings that I keep seeming to find myself reading. Next up we have you're on the floor, I can't reach. We have Aidan Thomas. I need to go get books again. I'm sensing a recurring theme here with first and favourite. However, we'll get to that in a second, because this is going to be the only one I reckon where there is going to be a tie for favourite, because both my first and my latest are joint favourites, and it is really difficult for me to choose between them. If I had to choose between them, I would go with my first. But it's just hard and I don't want to do it, and I feel like I'm just being mean if I do. So, the first, Cemetery Boys. How many times have I screamed about this book on this channel? It is uncountable. You literally cannot count the amount of times that I have raved about this book. It is so good. The lighting is doing funny things because it's that time of day where the light doesn't want to cooperate, and I apologise. But yeah, Cemetery Boys. It has queer rep. We have ghosts that may not actually be ghosts. We have vegan blood magic user who doesn't want to use blood magic because she's vegan. We have a transgender main character. We just have so much in this book, and it is so good, and it is incredible, and the audiobook is incredible, and it made me cry, and it makes me smile, and it brings me joy, and it has some of my all-time favourite moments, and you can tell just how much I love this book because the tabs that I have in this book are no joke. I have so many, and I ran out. I highlighted so much that I ran out of 2 highlighters. That's how much ink I used. So that was my first. And then my latest is the Sunbearer Trials, and this one is very much inspired by a lot of Latin countries, and has like even indigenous inspiration, and it just brings together all of these cultures to have a beautiful storyline. It has another trans main character. We have so much rep, including deaf rep in this, and it's just so diverse, so awesome. And it was promoted as Hunger Games meets Percy Jackson. I can't disagree, and I really loved it. It ended on a cliffhanger. The sequel is out this year, and I've got to reread this in order to get to the sequel, and I can't wait. Next up we have, and probably last up I think, yeah, it's probably going to be the last one because it's going to take me too freaking long. Nalini Singh, aka my favourite author of all time, whose books I read religiously and reread at least once every single year. For this one, I feel it would be really unfair on myself to try and pick a favourite. I will say the first book, I don't own a physical copy of it because I loaned it to someone and the person stole it. This was Angel's Blood, which is the first book in the Guild Hunter series. We are introduced to Elena, who is a vampire hunter. She has the ability to smell vampires because every vampire has a very unique scent, and she can hunt and track them. She gets hired by the Archangel of her region to track down a mark, but it turns out that the mark is not a vampire, it's another Archangel. And she ends up falling in love with the Archangel that hires her, which just kickstarts this entire series, and it is so good. It blew my mind. And for about 5 years, it was pretty much the only series that I read. No, not 5 years. I'd say about 3 years. The only thing I read was this series. Partly because I was at uni and I didn't have time or money to buy books, partly because I went through a lot of grief and a lot of trauma through that time, because I lost my mother, my grandfather, and then my aunt and my other grandfather within 3 weeks of each other, all within a 3-year period. So I kind of use those books as a coping mechanism and as my crutch for my grief. So it's just going to hold a very special place in my heart. My latest is Resonance Surge. This one came out last year. It's the latest of the Psy Changeling books. I was very, very, very kindly sent a review copy by Galanx, the UK publisher. It's one of my favourites in the series because we go to the bears, and I love the Stonewater bears. They are like my favourite pack of changelings. Every time we're with the bears, I know I'm going to be in for the best time. I can't really talk about this because this is book 23 in the Psy Changeling series. So the less I say about this, the better. But that being said, my favourite, I'm going by the series rather than the book, because I've said before, it is almost impossible for me to pick an exact favourite from the series, but the Psy Changeling series is my favourite, not only of Nalini Singh's, but of any author and anything, anywhere. As you know, I have the Singh shelves. I have 3 shelves dedicated to Nalini's books, and there's only 3 shelves currently because I don't own every single book yet. I'm still missing a series, and I want to get a physical copy of Quiet in Her Bones that I read a couple of years ago. But yeah, we all know this is a Nalini Singh channel, so is anybody surprised? Because I'm not at all. And I'm going to do one final one for this video and try and do like a speed round if I can. And we have Maggie Stiefvater. So I was, for a split second, I was like, I can't use this because I've not read 3. But technically I have, because Call Down the Hawk is a separate series, technically, to the Raven Boys. And I did start Shiver, but DNF'd it. Anyway, that is by and by. The first book that I read by Maggie Stiefvater was in fact Shiver. Unfortunately, it wasn't for me. I was reading it when I was like 28, 29 years old. I did find it to be a little bit too much on the YA side. It was just a little bit too juvenile for me. Like, the characters just felt too young and I wasn't having a good time, so I ended up DNFing that. My latest is Call Down the Hawk, which is the first book in the Dreamers trilogy, which is the sequel series to The Raven Cycle. And in this one we focus on the Lynch brothers. I'm not going to say much because of spoilers, but I will say I did have a really good time with it. I did give it 4 stars. or 3.5. I am going to continue the series, and all that book did is just reminded me why I love Ronan Lynch and that he is just now one of my all-time favourite characters. But my favourite book that I've read from her is Blue Lily, Lily Blue, which is book 3 in the Raven Cycle. And the reason why this is my favourite is because in this one, I felt like this is where we really, really got to see each character come into their own. I felt like everyone got an equal focus. The plot kind of started to make a bit more sense to me because it was a very nonsensical series, let's be honest. And also Jesse was a side character that was brought in, and I just instantly loved him. There was just so much about the book that I loved. I also adored the narration because it's narrated by Will Patton, who's an actor I really love anyway, but his narrations were brilliant. But I feel it just added to that layer of the book being a bit like mystical and creepy. His voice at times really emphasized that atmosphere and made it so I was like, oh, and I was so invested. It was definitely my favourite in the series and made me go, yeah, this is now a favourite series, rather than it just being, this is a bit weird and I'm not sure if I like it. So there you have it. Those are a few authors and the books that I have enjoyed. And like I said, my latest and my favourite. Don't forget to please go check out Zoe and her channel because I promise you, you will not regret it. I really hope that you enjoyed that. Like I said, I do still have other authors to come, so keep a watch out for future videos because this will have a part 2 at some point, probably in the next year. Who knows? So if you are interested, then you'll have to like and subscribe, won't you? To get notifications, to know when I upload. Also, I have just released a Patreon, just as a quick reminder. This has extra bookish and content. And if you're a writer, we're also building a writing community complete with a G Drive that will have lots of resources that everyone can add to. And yeah, in the meantime, I hope you're all good. I hope you're staying safe. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I will see you on the next video. Bye. Oh my god, so hot. It's so hot.